Vyananjana Salakaya Dakshurmilitam Jena Chashmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shapitam Jena Swayam Rupagada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvidamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Banchakapachubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudidayet Nasta Presho Badresho Nityam Bhagavad Shevaya Bhagavad Yuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. All right, today, Thursday, June 26th, 2025. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order. Chapter 29 talks between Narada and King Pratinabhahi. Today, text number 3. Yo vigyata hritastasya Purushasya Shakeshwaraha Yanna vigyayate pumbir Nama birva kriya gunai Yo vigyata hritastasya Purushasya Shakeshwaraha Yanna vigyayate pumbir Nama birva kriya gunai Yo vigyata hritastasya Purushasya Shakeshwaraha Yanna vigyayate pumbir Nama birva kriya gunai Yo vigyata hritastasya Purushasya Shakeshwaraha Yanna vigyayate pumbir Nama birva kriya gunai Yo vigyata hritastasya Purushasya Shakeshwaraha Yanna vigyayate pumbir Yo vigyata hritastasya Purushasya Shakeshwaraha Yana Vigayate Pungabir Namabir Bakriya Gunai
Yo Vigaya Tarastasya
Yo Vigyata Hritastasya
Purusaya Sukesavra
Purushasya Shakeshwaraha
Navigataye Pumbya
Yana Vigayate Pungabir
Namabirva Kriya Guna
Namabir Bakriya Gunai. The word for word, we will repeat. Yaha, he who, avigata, unknown, ahritaha, described, tasya, of him, purushasya, of the living entity, shaka, the eternal friend, ishwaraha, the master, yat, because, na, never, vigayate, is understood, pumbihi, by the living entities, namabihi, by names, ba, or, kriya gunai, by activities or qualities. Translation. The person I have described as unknown is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master and eternal friend of the living entity. Who knows who's speaking? I know you know, because you know everything. You always know. Narada Muni speaking. Oh yeah, you gave class on text 1. Sri Narada Uvacha, right? You should know. Since the living entities cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material names, activities, or qualities, he remains everlastingly unknown to the conditioned soul. Please repeat. The person I have described as unknown is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master and eternal friend of the living entity. Since the living entities cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material names, activities, or qualities, he remains everlastingly unknown to the conditioned soul. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unknown to the conditioned soul, he is sometimes described in Vedic literature as Nirakara, Avigyata, or Avana Manasa Gochara. Actually, it is a fact that the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be perceived by material senses as far as his form, name, quality, pastimes, or paraphernalia are concerned. However, when one is spiritually advanced, one can understand the name, form, qualities, pastimes, and paraphernalia of the Supreme Lord. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 18:55. Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavanyas tatpataha. One can understand in truth the Supreme Personality of Godhead only when one is engaged in devotional service. Ordinary persons engaged in pious and impious activities cannot understand the form, name, and activities of the Lord. The devotee, however, can know the personality of Godhead in many respects. He can understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that his address is Goloka Vrindavana, and that his activities are all spiritual. Because the Lord's form and activities cannot be understood by materialistic people, he is described by the Shastras as Nirakara, that is, one whose form cannot be ascertained by a materialistic person. This does not mean that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no form. It means that it is not understood by the karmis, or fruitive actors. His form is described in Brahma Samhita as Satchit Ananda Vigraha, as confirmed by the Padma Purana. Atak Sri Krishna Namad Nabhavad Greyam Indriye Shevan Mukhe Jivadao Swayameva Sparatidha. No one can understand Krishna as he is by utilizing the blunt material senses. However, the Lord reveals himself to his devotees, being pleased with them because of their transcendental loving service rendered unto him. Since the name, form, qualities, and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna cannot be understood by the material senses, he is also called Adhoksaja, meaning beyond sense perception. When the senses are purified by devotional activity, the devotee understands everything about the Lord by the Lord's grace. In this verse, the words Humbir Nhama Bhir Bha Kriya Gunai are especially significant because God, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has many names, activities, and qualities, although none of them are material. Despite the fact that all these names, activities, and pastimes are mentioned in the Shastras and understood by the devotees, the karmis, fruitive laborers, cannot understand them. Nor can the jnanis, mental speculators, understand them. Although there are thousands of names of Lord Vishnu, the karmis and gantis intermingle the names of the Supreme Godhead with the names of demigods and human beings because they cannot understand the actual name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They take it for granted that any name can be accepted. They believe that since the absolute truth is impersonal, they can call him by any name. Otherwise, they maintain, he has no name. Complete foolishness, but Prabhupada is perfectly describing what's going on. Otherwise, they maintain he has no name. This is not a fact. Here it is clearly stated, Namabir Ba Kriya Gunai. The Lord has specific names, such as Rama, Krishna, Govinda, Narayana, Vishnu, and Adhoksaja. There are indeed many names, but the conditioned soul cannot understand them. That makes it a little hard to preach to people because you can't understand what you're talking about. You have to become devotees. Of course, we try to preach in such a way that they do become devotees. Then they understand once they become a devotee. Yo vijata ritastasya purushasya shakeshwaraha yanna vijayate pumbir namabir ba kriya gunai. The person I have described as unknown is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master and eternal friend of the living entity. Since the living entities cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material names, activities, or qualities, he remains everlastingly unknown to the conditioned soul. Mukhum karoti vachalam hangvam lagayate girim jad kripa tamaham bande sigurum nidataranam paramananda madhavam. Many decades ago, there was a devotee we knew named Adhoksaja, which means that it's a name for Krishna, that he's beyond the range of the material senses. You can't understand him. And this devotee was really into humor and comedy. He used to do skits at the Sunday feast. And so his nickname was A Joke for Ya. Adhoksaja had a joke for ya. And his nickname for me was Dear Old Datta. At that time, I was 22 years old. It applies more now than it did then. But that was the joke, the dearest and oldest of the Dattas. That was his joke. He was quite funny. Did great skits. Did these two-man skits, they were fantastic. He was empowered. He was also Pujari. Tall, big guy. Wonderful devotee. I don't know whatever happened to him. New Yorker. So, Narad is explaining to King Prachini Barhi that sometimes, Prabhupada also explains that because the Lord is unknown, this word avigyata means unknown, he's unknown to the conditioned souls. So sometimes he's described in the Vedas as nirakara, which means having no form. But it's not that God is formless. He has a form, but it's not a material form, or it's not a form that can be understood by blunt material senses or by mental speculation. That form can be appreciated as spiritual by the devotees. So we see that Krishna explains this, that mudhoyam nabijananti, that there are those, they don't see Krishna. They look in the material world, they don't see the Lord. They see, he's not there. He's not there. Neti, neti. This is not God, that is not God. Neti, neti, neti. But fools who are covered by the material energy, they can't understand anything about Krishna. And as Prabhupada very nicely quotes here, Bhaktya mam abhijananti, yavanyas tasmi tatpataha, tato mam tatpato gyatva, vishate tadanantaram. That in the 18th chapter, text 55, if you want to understand Krishna, that's good, that's nice. We want to understand what is God, what is Krishna. Yes. But the method for understanding him is not speculation or even Vedic research. You would think, oh yeah, Vedic research, come on, it's right there. But no, Vedeshur Durlabham. It's actually impossible practically, just by Vedic study, to understand the Lord. However, in Brahma Samhita it says, Vedeshur Durlabham, and then immediately, Adurlabham. Atma Bhakto. It becomes very easy, Atma Bhakto, by devotion of the self to God. So that is quite clear if we study the Vedas properly. But if you just try to study the Vedas in a speculative way, Vedesha Durlabham, you won't get there. As a matter of fact, the material nature, Maya, is very expert at keeping the conditioned souls away from Krishna. Keeping the conditioned souls away, like, W.C. Fields. Does everybody know who W.C. Fields was? No? The famous movie actor in the 1930s. Don't bother me, boy. Don't bother me. I hate kids. It was a real character. He was always involved with, there was another actor named Mae West. Hey, big boy, why don't you come up and see me sometime? So these were famous characters, but W.C. Fields, don't bother me, don't bother me. He was too absorbed in himself to be bothered by anyone. So Maya wants to make sure that no one bothers Krishna. Oh, you conditioned souls, don't bother Krishna unless you become a devotee. Then you have access. But otherwise, no. And there's a nice verse. There's a couple of verses from the Padma Purana I'm going to refer to here. This is a cool verse. Naham tishtami vaikunte yoginam hridayeshava tatra tishtami narada yatara gayanti madbhaktaha. This is the Lord speaking actually to Narada Muni, who is speaking today's verse. Naham tishtami vaikunte. I am not there in Vaikuntha. Yoginam hridayeshava. You can't find me in the hearts of the yogis. And what are the yogis doing? They're meditating to see the Lord in the heart. Right? Tata tishtami narada yata gayanti madbhakta. Where am I? Where is the Lord to be found? Yata gayanti. Gayanti means singing or chanting. Madbhakta, where my devotees are singing my qualities and pastimes and holy names. That's where the Lord is to be found. This is the Lord himself speaking, that if you're searching in these different ways and places, for me, you won't see me. But you will find me where my devotees are gathered together, hearing and chanting my names, my qualities, my forms, and my pastimes. As we sing every single morning, Sri Radhika Madhavayo Rapada Madhuya Lila Gunarupa Namnam. That the spiritual master is absorbed in Radha Madhava, Sri Radhika Madhavayo Rapada. What is he absorbed in them doing? Madhurya Lila, engaging in their transcendental loving pastimes. Guna Rupa Nam Nam. Discussing and meditating on Madhurya Lila, their transcendental pastimes of love. Guna, their qualities. Rupa, their forms. Nam Nam, and their names. So that is the bona fide way to think about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is how he is revealed. Narottam Das also explains that you cannot understand the pastimes of Radha and Krishna without going through the books of the six Goswamis. That's why Prabhupada has given us nectar of devotion. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Rasamrita, the ocean of nectar of bhakti, of devotional service, translates as nectar of devotion. But Bhakti Rasamrita, rasa means that loving exchange, amrita, the nectar, and Sindhu, it's an ocean, that ocean of love for Krishna that is obtainable and experienced through bhakti. Bhakti amam abhijananti. That is the method. And what does he say in that verse? Yavanyas chasmi tattvataha. If you want to know me in truth, this word tattvaha gets used a lot. Tattva, the truth. Like in the fourth chapter, evam yoveti tattvataha. So janma karma chame divyam. Krishna says that my appearance, my janma, my birth, my appearance, janma karma, my activities, chame divyam, those are transcendental. Evam yoveti tattvataha. And for one who becomes a devotee and understands them sufficiently, or tattvataha, in truth, then does not take birth again in this material world, such a knower of the truth, but returns to my spiritual abode. Yavanyas chasmi tatvataha. Tato mam tatvato gyatva. Vishate tadanantaram. That Vishate tadanantaram means you go back to the spiritual world. That's the place to be. You want to be somewhere. You want to make the scene. You want to do the cool thing. Vishate tadanantaram. That's what you do. You understand Krishna through devotional service, and then you go back home, back to Godhead. As it also says in the Padma Purana, Smartavyak satatam vishnur vismart yodo najatu shit sarvavidhe nishedoshur etayor eva kinkaraha. That one should smartata satatam vishnur. Smarta means remembering. Satata means always. Smartavya satatam Vishnu. Always remember Vishnu or Krishna. Vismartyavo najatu sit. Vismartyavo means to forget. Na. Vismartyavo na jatu sit. Never forget him. Always remember Krishna. Never forget Krishna. And that is the essence. Sarva vidhe nishedoshur. Of all the rules and regulations, and of all Shastric understanding, of all Vedic understanding, which comes from the Shastras. So, always remember Krishna and never forget him. I even had an experience one time, well, many times, many experiences, but one time I was doing, collecting in the parking lots in Maine. Maine, eh? Talk like that. Maine, eh? Do this little breath at the end, eh? So it was cold, as Maine is what? The northernmost state on the eastern seaboard, right next to Newfoundland. Very cold place. Cold parking lot. And I was a little bit Maya, and whenever I was forgetting Krishna and Maya, it became very cold. Cold and damp. Oh, God. Jeez, what am I doing out here? Something we don't experience that much in Arizona. And then I started chanting and trying to remember Krishna. And immediately, I didn't feel cold anymore. I wasn't in Maya anymore because I was remembering Krishna. So I wasn't cold. I wasn't miserable. My mind was not disturbed why I'm in this freaking cold parking lot in November in Maine, Those of us who only live in ISKCON Tucson, we don't know the austerities that some devotees have performed in the northern climates. And we used to have a preaching center in Maine, in a place called Bangor. And the nickname for that, it was just a little house, a Sankirtan. You can only go there like in May, June, and then the rest of the time it's frozen over and closed. So, although apparently it may also be a tropical paradise, but that's perceived on another level of reality where Vyasadeva lives. Still, he's still there today. So in New Bhadrak Ashram, it was cold. It was freezing cold. But the devotees, through service, surrender, sacrifice, and remembering the Lord, many times did not even notice that cold. Not at all. Never tell the story. We had a traveling party in the van up in Maine, and it was far enough into the fall season where the campgrounds were closed already because no more tourists. The tourists have all long gone south. But we found one campground, and they said, well, you can pull into one of the spaces, and there's a spigot there. And there was also a electrical outlet. And we'll let you stay there for cheap because, you know, it's past the season. And it was primitive camping. There was no bathhouse or anything. So in order to take shower in the morning, because devotees are very serious about their regular principles, rising early, taking bath, right? Everyone has to do that. Every devotee has to do that. But there was no bathhouse, no facility. So we had gallon jugs of water. Well, we had 1 gallon jug, and you would fill it up from the spigot. Or just jump out and then hold the hose over your head. It was really cold. And then inside the van, it was warm because the electric heater was plugged in. So it was so cold that devotees would jump out of the van. This is, you know, at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's dark, it's cold, and they would turn on the spigot to hold the hose over their head, and then turn it off and jump back in the van before the water even hit them. Because that water was too cold, it would take your breath away. But that was not the coldest water I experienced ever. Another place that was famous for the cold water was the temple in Manhattan on 55th Street. It had a big tank of water. The water would be pumped up to the roof, and then the tank would provide the gravity for the water to feed the building. That water was cold. And there was a little bit of hot water available if you got up at 3 o'clock. By 3:30, hot water gone. And only cold showers. That was some pretty cold water. But that was not the coldest. There was one place that has colder water. In the basement of the Toronto temple. And this is in the summer. That water comes from the bottom of the lake. One of the Great Lakes. I forget which lake it is there. One of the Great Lakes. So it's the water's at the bottom of the lake. So it's cold all year long, that cold water. And even in the summer, when that cold water comes out of those taps, that shower, it'll take your breath away. And so you're there in July during Rath Yatra time, and that is some cold water. But those kinds of austerities, they may seem a little extreme. And Srila Prabhupada, when he was doing his pharmaceutical business in India, he would travel by train to different places in India and stay in some little hotel, not like a Holiday Inn or something like that, but you know, these little Indian hotels. And they would only have cold water. Yet he would rise early in the morning and take his bath with the cold water. And one such hotel keeper was greatly surprised. But Prabhupada, he was, after all, a Gaudiya Mahathman, an initiated disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. He rose early and took his bath, just like the brahmacharis in the temple. Same practices. So anyway, these are all some humorous things about austerities and cold water. But when one remembers Krishna, then all this, whatever little austerities or sacrifices we make in devotional service, they don't seem very inconvenient or difficult, although we may take it like that now. When you look back on it, I was just got a reminder from one devotee who I knew decades ago said that, you know, all that trouble we took, all those austerities we performed, we could have, you know, been like these big kirtaniers in ISKCON now, just travel around, stay in nice accommodations, get paid, have air tickets to take them here and there, and just go to all these kirtan festivals and take nice prasad and just chant all the time and hang out with all the big sannyasis and big devotees. We didn't have anything like that then. We did so many else. Back in those days, you know, it was the devotees that maintained the temples by going out and collecting money. It wasn't, you know, here we have the restaurant. Thank God for Sundamani's forward-thinking vision to start this restaurant to maintain the temple. And then I told this devotee, yes, but all those austerities we performed, all that difficulty we went through, do you think that was in vain? No, that was done as a service and a sacrifice for Krishna. And you have no idea what kind of glorious destination you have because you took that trouble for Krishna. Krishna is not like cold-hearted, a merciless taskmaster. No, he's not like that. He is full of love and reciprocation. Yeyatam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham. That all of them, as they surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. So the more we surrender to Krishna, the more Krishna takes into account that surrender and that accompanying service. And then the more he rewards it. So as far as myself personally, I regret nothing. I don't wish I was flying around in an airplane and chanting Hare Krishna at the big festivals with the big rock star kirtaneers. Although sometimes I like to play in their bands if they invite me. And the surrender and sacrifice I've done, I'm very confident that was well worth it. Well worth it. So it is a sacrifice and austerity sometimes, just to put up with everyone and disregard the inconsistencies and the failures and the disappointments one may have in others, or trying to figure out why some devotee does some weird thing, why? God, why? But that is part of the austerity. It was Radhanath Swami who said that just like they have one procedure for gemstones, valuable gemstones, but they're very rough, so they throw them in a container together, and then they agitate that container. You have like a machine, and all those stones are rubbing up against one another with their rough edges. But after a while of being in that container with that agitation and that, being banged together, they gradually become smooth. They become very smooth and shiny and very nice, and very highly desirable. So he compared that to the devotees standing shoulder to shoulder together, trying to serve Krishna, one shoulder bumping up against the other in the rough edges of the varying types of personalities. We come to Krishna consciousness, we bring some baggage with us and some lack of purification. Certainly we're not all coming from high-class Brahmin families who are trained from very birth to be first-class devotees with all good qualities and all good habits. But so we bump up against each other and we rub up against each other. But then gradually those rough edges become smoothed out. And over time, Savarganas Tatra Samasute Sudaha, those good qualities that you find in the suras, the demigods, they automatically become visible in the person of a devotee. Overnight? No. Next week? That's being a little impatient. But gradually. And then, what is the quality of one who is a sadhu? Titikshava, karunika, surida sarvadehinam. One learns to become very tolerant and karunika, merciful. Just like I just saw Manjil here a little while ago. His little daughter's named Karuna, which means the merciful one. So titikshava karunika, tolerant and merciful. Surida sarvadehinam, the best well-wishing friend of all living entities. That's an amazing quality. Sadhuvak sadhu bhushanam, those are the good qualities that decorate. Sadhu bhushana means the ornaments of the sadhus. are those good qualities. So that comes about gradually, but not all at once. And so therefore one has to be willing to accept whatever situation in Krishna consciousness, whatever Krishna gives, or you could say whatever your destiny is, whatever is arranged, because it's not in your control. And then all good will come out of that eventually, especially if one looks back on years and years and years of practicing Krishna consciousness. And certainly, seen from a distance of years, you could laugh. Boy, we had some wacky devotees and they did some wacky things. But all that was worth it. Because what would you have been doing otherwise if you weren't engaged in Krishna service with all its attendant difficulties and situational inconveniences? It would have been in Maya. It would have been completely in Maya without Krishna consciousness. So, and what would that have gotten you? Or what will that get you if you take to that again? What will that get you? It's not good. So better accept a little, bitter tasting medicine, sometimes medicine that's required. It's a little, we call it a bitter pill to swallow. It's a little bit bitter. You taste that medicine, ugh. I don't want to, like the mother trying to give the little kid the medicine in the spoon. It's like the kid, especially a little toddler. He's all about the senses. And if it tastes bad, he doesn't want it. And he's like, no. But the mother knows the child needs the medicine to recover from the illness and to grow properly and luxuriously. So throughout whatever trials, tribulations, difficulties we may encounter, and that's perfectly explained in the 10th canto. Tate nukampam shukshamikshimanu munjana evatmakritam vipakam pridvagva purvir vididhana namashte jiveta yo mukti pade sadayavak. That a devotee, he may encounter some suffering, or everyone, the devotee will encounter some suffering in his life. Who knows in what form it will come? Like my friend Guru Krishna was just here, married for 40 years, built up a substantial amount of wealth through owning properties. And then all of a sudden, without any warning, his wife takes a couple $100,000 cash they had in the safe and runs off. And then says, I'm divorcing you. And I want this and I want that. And then she hires a lawyer. And so how would he have known when they got married? I remember when he brought her up from Guyana. Nice little Indian girl, humble, sweet. Who would have ever guessed that she would turn into a monster? Who could have known? He never knew. And then he's like, why am I suffering? He said, what should I do? What should I do? I said, get a good lawyer. They're in California. I think California is just 50-50 split, whatever. So take your lumps. And she even got a court order on him that he couldn't come in the house, even though he never touched her. He never hurt her or hit her or anything. She hit him. And so then he's like, she's staying in the temple and doing like maintenance work and stuff at the temple. They're good, they need you. Actually, you can come stay here. We need a maintenance man really bad. So we have 2 dead washing machines, the internet's on the fritz. What else? It's like all at once it hits. So yeah, come here and fix stuff. You got all those great mechanical and construction, wiring, plumbing, all those great skills, that most of our devotees do not have. So he's going to go through some suffering, and he's just bewildered. Like, why is this happening to me? That's what happens when people suffer. What do? God, why are you doing this to me? Why are you making me suffer? What have I ever done to you? Right? Well, you've done plenty to yourself in this life. What to speak of previous lives, you've done a lot. So don't go acting all innocent, like you never did anything wrong, and why am I suffering now? So it goes. But Bhagavatam informs us, Tate nukampam shukshamikshamano, bunjana evama kritam vipakam. If the devotee encounters some difficulty, some suffering, he thinks, well, actually it should have been worse. But Krishna's so merciful, he's just given me a little taste of that hellish suffering. Just a little taste. Like one gets a little cut on the finger instead of having one's head chopped off, which is what should have happened. One just gets a little cut. So that's the mercy of the Lord. And so he doesn't blame God, but he goes on performing his Krishna consciousness. Hridvag vapurvir. Hrid means the heart. From within the heart. Hridvag vapurvir. Vididhan namaste. He offers his obeisances to Krishna from within the core of his heart and goes on patiently suffering whatever the external material conditions are. So what is the result of that? Jiveta yo mukti pade sadayabhak. He is eligible for liberation, sadayabhak, for it has become his rightful claim. And this dayabhak is a Sanskrit term that refers to primogeniture, where the eldest son inherits all the property of the father. What is his qualification? Well, he's the eldest son. So he inherits all the property. It's his rightful claim. So one is eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim because of his attitude of accepting whatever the Lord sends, and who knows why, and who knows what we've done, and who knows why we get smacked around like we do, but we do. And whose experience is that? Everyone. No one is exempt. Like we're fond of quoting a quote from a skit from Monty Python's Flying Circus, which many of you may not know, a British comedy troupe. One of their skits was the Spanish Inquisition. And they did all these hilarious things, and the line was, "No one escapes the Spanish Inquisition." The Spanish Inquisition was no joke, by the way. They just, accused people of this and that, and tortured them and killed them for not being perfectly pure religious in their immature religious stage. Oh, you broke this little rule. Off with his head. Put him on the rack and stretch him out. The Spanish Inquisition, a very terrible time in history. And a lot of people were tortured and killed. So, what is that saying? There's an expression. Into every life some rain must enter. So that's just the nature of the beast of our material existence. Don't think that, just because I became Krishna conscious, now I can enjoy. So, Mame kam sharanam brajam, ahang twang sarva pape do. Krishna takes away all your papa, all your sins. All right. Got a clean slate. Now I'm really fit to enjoy life. But that is not the consciousness of the devotee. That Krishna, whatever you sinned, whatever difficulty, whatever inconvenience, okay. I accept. And I offer my obeisances to Krishna from within the core of my heart. Just let me continue to remain your servant. And there's a very nice purport in the 7th canto where Prabhupada says that Krishna sticks with the devotee through thick and thin. And the devotee sticks with Krishna through thick and thin. So thick and thin. Thick means good times. Thin means it's wearing a little thin, this material existence on me, I'm suffering. So, but the devotee doesn't blame Krishna and go away and try to become an enjoyer. No, that's foolishness. He sticks to Krishna's lotus feet through good times, through bad times. Good times, bad times, I've seen it all. But the true nectar is taking shelter of Krishna, never forgetting Krishna, always remembering Krishna, sticking with the association of devotees, hearing and chanting about Krishna, taking prasad, doing some service, and in this way going back home, back to Godhead. And it's a glorious destination. Although for those who are in Maya, Prabhupada quotes the English maxim, trust no future, however pleasant. But that applies to the realm of the material energy. In the spiritual energy, what a future and how pleasant. But one has to have insight and deep faith and conviction and dridhavritaha, a firm determination to serve Krishna, no matter what funky, weird, unpleasant circumstance may arise, no matter how tough. What I say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So the devotee has to be dridhavritaha, tough, determined to serve Krishna, no matter what. Not an easy thing, but certainly well worth it in the end. Dhirodatta Maharaj tells the story that he was Prabhupada came to London. He was on the same flight, and they told Dhirodatta to stay behind and get the baggage. So then, and all the devotees and Prabhupada went to the temple at the very place. Prabhupada's up on the 2nd floor in his room. And then Dhirodatta comes struggling, with all the luggage, Prabhupada's luggage, the servant's luggage, all the luggage, his own luggage. He comes in, huffing and puffing up the stairs. I had this experience one time. I carried a Jayapataka Swami's suitcase up to the 3rd floor of the Philly temple. That particular suitcase was full of books. I struggled dragging it up the staircase, So finally he gets to Prabhupada's room and he flops down, all the bags crash. He's like, he's completely fried, He wanted to get the nectar of the darshan, Prabhupada's darshan with all the devotees. He's struggling. And then Prabhupada told him that, he said, this material world is full of struggling. It is so difficult, but when you go back to Godhead, no more struggling. Everything is very nice. No more hassles. No more struggling. No more carrying a suitcase of books that must have weighed 175 pounds up 3 flights of stairs. Well, 2 flights of stairs to the 3rd floor. That was the heaviest thing I ever carried in my life. Although one time, Gunagrai Maharaj, the Gurukul had a house a little ways from the temple, and the Gurukul was no longer there. The house was there, and he was staying there, but he couldn't walk at that time. He'd hurt himself, and so he said, "Can you take me up the stairs on your back?" And I weighed about 125 pounds at the time, significantly less than I do now, and put him on my back. Like, when you play chicken, somebody gets up on your back. And he was a much bigger, heavier fellow than me. And I carried him up those stairs. But I didn't complain. I thought, here's a great preacher and a sannyasi. Surely I get some big credit for this. I'm carrying him on my back now. Later, Krishna will carry me back home, back to Godhead. Okay, that's a deal. I accept. All right, we'll stop here. Realizations from the devotees? Comment, question? No, I was going to say. Good to see you, Tara. All right, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavatam ki jai.
Thank you for reminding me. It's a good time to